The 7 biggest time thieves that are stealing 10+ hours from your week: digital distractions, inefficient meetings, fake multitasking, perfectionism, task switching, unplanned interruptions, and poor environment design. By the end of this video, you'll know how to eliminate all of them. Have you noticed how hard it is to stay focused lately? You're not alone. A massive study revealed that 92% of employers are alarmed by their employees' declining focus. The research shows the average person loses between 6 to 10 hours weekly to these productivity killers. Think about that. You're essentially working a 6-day week, but only getting paid for 5. Imagine what you could do with those extra hours. The shocking truth about workplace distractions. Did you know your coworkers might be your biggest productivity problem? I know it sounds weird, but hear me out. We've all been there, trying to focus on an important task when suddenly Dave from accounting wants to tell you about his weekend fishing trip, or Sarah from marketing stops by to ask a quick question that turns into a 20-minute conversation. The 2024 Insightful Report reveals eye-opening findings about workplace distractions. After surveying 1,200 people, they discovered something unexpected about what truly derails our focus. If asked about your biggest workplace distraction, you might mention your phone, email notifications, or that addictive social media app. But the research points to a different culprit altogether. While many of us blame technology for stealing our focus, those constant pings and alerts fragmenting our attention, the data reveals a different reality in workplaces across the country. The report found that 71% of employees identified their coworkers as their main focus disruptor. The people sitting around you impact your productivity more than your devices or apps. When you reflect on your workday, how many times has someone stopping by your desk completely derailed your train of thought? These human interruptions significantly outweigh technological distractions. Phone notifications ranked second at 62%, email alerts at 32%, and chat applications like Slack or Teams at just 27%. This evidence contradicts conventional productivity wisdom. For years, productivity gurus have advised putting phones in another room or using website blocking apps when perhaps we should have focused on establishing boundaries with our colleagues instead. These interruptions function like potholes on the road to productivity, each one forcing you to slow down, navigate around the disruption, and then try to regain your momentum. They're not minor bumps, but productivity sinkholes that cost companies serious money. According to the report, most employers estimate each employee loses between 6 to 10 hours weekly from distractions. That's essentially an entire workday every week vanishing into thin air. For a company with 100 employees, losing 8 hours weekly on average, that's 800 productive hours paid for but not received. The financial implications become alarming when calculated based on average salaries. I experienced this firsthand while working on a critical project last year. My cubicle's location near the break room meant constant conversation invitations. By day's end, I felt completely exhausted, yet frustrated by my unchanged to-do list. Those brief interruptions were stealing significant portions of my productive capacity. The research confirms what productivity experts have long maintained. The real cost extends beyond the interruption itself to include recovery time. Studies show regaining your previous focus level can take 15 to 23 minutes after an interruption. A 30-second question potentially costs nearly half an hour of productive time. This cycle explains why many feel like they work all day with little to show for it. We start focusing, get interrupted, try refocusing, face another interruption, and so on. By day's end, we've experienced only brief periods of concentrated work. We've developed elaborate defenses against digital distractions, website blockers, phone lockboxes, notification settings, while neglecting protocols for human interruptions. We've focused on the minor threat while ignoring the major one. Timing matters too. Interruptions during complex tasks prove especially costly. When you're engaged in deep thinking or creative work, an interruption doesn't merely pause your progress, it can erase your entire thought process. Those breakthrough ideas you were approaching? Gone because someone wanted to discuss the latest office gossip. Fortunately, the report suggests practical solutions that have helped companies reduce coworker interruptions. Some workplaces implement focus hours, periods where interruptions are discouraged unless absolutely necessary. Others use visual signals like colored lights indicating when someone shouldn't be disturbed. I've started wearing headphones at work, even without listening to anything, simply to signal my concentration efforts. Some colleagues block focus time on their calendars to prevent meeting requests during their most productive hours. The most effective approach involves creating a workplace culture respecting focused work time. This requires open conversations about appropriate interruption times and thoughtfulness about whether questions need immediate answers or can wait for scheduled check-in times. Another strategy involves reorganizing office spaces to create both collaborative areas and quiet zones. This allows people needing to focus to retreat to distraction-free environments while maintaining spaces for spontaneous interactions that spark creativity and build team relationships. The research also indicated that remote work appeals to many precisely because it eliminates most coworker interruptions. Working from home provides greater environment control. Chatty colleagues can only reach you through digital means, which you can mute or check according to your schedule. By recognizing that our greatest productivity obstacles might be sitting in the next cubicle rather than lurking in our phones, we can develop more effective strategies for protecting our focus and reclaiming those lost hours of productivity. The remote work productivity myth. Speaking of working from home, there's this weird contradiction happening in workplaces right now. Your boss might think you're slacking off when you're not in the office, but what if the numbers actually show you're getting more done? The 2024 Insightful Report uncovered something about remote work that basically flips everything managers have been saying on its head. I mean, we've all heard it, right? People who work from home are probably just watching Netflix and doing laundry between Zoom calls. This unspoken assumption that invisible employees must be goofing off has driven the return to office push at many companies, with managers convinced that productivity suffers when employees work remotely. But here's the thing. The Insightful Report, Lost Focus, the Cost of Distractions on Productivity in the Modern Workplace, discovered something surprising. When they actually measured productivity instead of assuming things, they found that 54% of employers reported that employee productivity increased with remote work arrangements. More than half of employers seeing better results when people work from home. I experienced this personally during the pandemic. Initially, I worried about getting distracted by household chores or my comfy couch. Instead, I found myself focusing deeply on complicated tasks for much longer periods. Without colleagues dropping by my desk every 20 minutes, I could enter a flow state and maintain it. This pattern matches what the research found. Without office interruptions, many people accomplish more meaningful work. This data completely contradicts what many companies claim as they force everyone back to cubicles. All those speeches about collaborative synergy and workplace culture overlook something important. People simply get more done when they're not constantly being interrupted. Looking at the other side of the coin reveals even more. Only 26% of employers reported a decrease in focus among remote workers. Among the skeptics, barely a quarter of companies saw any negative impact. The rest either saw improvements or no significant change, which contradicts the remote work doom and gloom we've been hearing. When researchers asked employees themselves about their ability to concentrate, 40% specifically said they focus better when working from home. Only 15% found that remote work decreased their focus. Nearly 3 times as many people concentrate better at home than those who struggle with it. Almost half of workers focus better away from the office environment supposedly designed for productivity. That's significant, especially when companies spend millions on office space that might actually make their employees less productive. This makes perfect sense considering what we learned about workplace distractions. If your biggest focus disruptors are people sitting around you, you'll naturally concentrate better when you're not constantly interrupted by shoulder taps or conversations from the next cubicle. Remote work also allows environment customization to match how you work best. Some people need absolute silence, others prefer background music, Some work better standing up, others sitting on an exercise ball. In an office, you're stuck with whatever environment they provide, but at home you can create the ideal setup for your brain. The insightful report also reveals something about work quality. People doing remote work often engage in deeper, more focused work. The complex problem-solving and creative thinking that drives innovation requires long stretches of uninterrupted focus, which remote environments facilitate better for many people. Remote work isn't perfect for everyone or every job. Some roles and personalities thrive on in-person collaboration. Some people struggle with isolation or home distractions. But the research clearly shows that the blanket assumption that remote work reduces productivity is wrong for most workers. Trust plays an important role in this conversation. Companies assuming remote workers slack off essentially say they don't trust employees. Organizations that embrace remote work and focus on results rather than monitoring login times often see higher productivity and more engaged workers. Remote work doesn't just eliminate distractions. It empowers employees to structure their workday according to personal productivity rhythms. Some people perform best in the morning, others in the afternoon or evening. Office environments force everyone into the same 9-to-5 schedule, regardless of when they personally work best. Remote work aligns challenging tasks with peak mental performance times. The productivity boost has significant financial implications. When more than half of companies see increased productivity with remote work, that translates to real business outcomes: more output, faster project completion, and better bottom-line results. Companies pushing return-to-office policies might actually harm their financial performance unknowingly. This resistance to remote work among company leaders might stem from control issues or comfort with tradition. But as data tells a different story, forward-thinking companies are rethinking their approach, focusing less on work location and more on creating conditions that maximize focus and output. Some innovative tech companies that initially demanded full return to office have quietly relaxed those policies after losing talented employees to flexible competitors. They've learned that forcing people to work in less productive environments doesn't make business sense. We're reaching a turning point where companies will increasingly make decisions based on productivity data rather than assumptions. Those that do will likely gain competitive advantages in attracting and retaining talented people who know where and how they work best. The hidden cost of lost focus. While companies focus on actual productivity data, there's a financial emergency hiding in plain sight. What if I told you that up to half of your paid work hours be completely wasted due to distractions? This is about a massive money leak that most businesses aren't even tracking. Let's get real about what's happening in workplaces right now. Companies meticulously track sales figures, marketing ROI, and operational costs. They've got dashboards and reports for everything. But there's this massive blind spot when it comes to understanding how much productive time is actually being used versus how much is being lost. It's like having a bucket with a hole in it and only measuring how much water you put in, not how much is leaking out. The numbers from the insightful report are pretty eye-opening. About 36% of employers think their employees lose between 1 to 5 hours weekly to distractions, which honestly doesn't sound too terrible. But that's just the beginning. Another 34% of employers estimate that employees lose between 6 to 10 hours each week. Think about that for a second. That's like working a full Monday and then half of Tuesday, but getting absolutely nothing done. Here's where things get really concerning. Nearly a quarter of leaders, 24% to be exact, believe their employees are losing between 11 to 20 hours every week to distractions. That's potentially half of a standard work week completely gone. Imagine paying someone for a full 40-hour week, but only getting about 20 to 29 hours of actual work. It's basically like having someone show up for 5 days, but only really work for 2.5 or 3 days. The craziest part? Most companies have no system for measuring or addressing this problem. They just accept it as the cost of doing business. But when you start crunching the numbers, the financial impact is staggering. Let's break it down. An employee making $60,000 a year who loses 10 hours weekly to distractions translates to over $14,000 in salary paid for zero value. Scale that to a department of 20 people, and you're looking at $280,000 annually. For a company with 100 employees, that's $1.4 million every year vanishing like water through that leaky bucket. For large corporations with thousands of employees, we're talking tens of millions of dollars. This is the kind of financial inefficiency that would cause absolute panic if it showed up in any other part of the business. Imagine if accounting discovered the company was losing $14,000 per employee each year through some error. There would be emergency meetings and immediate action plans. But because lost focus time is invisible on financial statements, it doesn't trigger the same alarm bells. What makes this situation even more frustrating is that it's not just the money being wasted, it's also the mental energy of employees. When people are constantly switching between tasks or being interrupted, they're burning through their limited cognitive resources without producing meaningful results. This leads to that exhausted feeling at the end of the day where you know you were busy, but can't point to anything significant you accomplished. The hidden productivity tax of regaining focus compounds the problem. Each time someone gets distracted, research shows it takes 15 to 23 minutes to fully regain focus. So even a quick 1-minute interruption might cost 10 times that in recovery time. With dozens of these small distractions throughout the day, the cumulative effect is massive. Another way to look at this problem is through the lens of what economists call deadweight loss, value that's simply destroyed rather than transferred. When an employee is distracted, that productive capacity isn't just moved somewhere else in the economy, it's completely lost. That's different from most other business costs, where the money you spend at least goes to someone else who can use it productively. Lost focus time is pure economic waste. So what's the solution here? First, companies need to start treating lost focus time as a measurable metric that impacts the bottom line. Just like they track sales conversion rates or manufacturing defects, they should be tracking how much focused work time employees are actually getting. There are software tools that can help with this, but even simple self-reporting systems can start to uncover the scale of the problem. Second, businesses need to redesign work environments and processes with focus in mind. This might mean implementing focus blocks where interruptions are prohibited, creating quiet zones in offices, or using visual signals to indicate when someone shouldn't be disturbed. It could also mean rethinking meeting culture. Do we really need to pull 6 people away from focused work for an hour to discuss something that could be handled in an email? Third, companies need to get serious about training employees on focus management skills. Most people have never been taught how to create and protect deep focus time, how to batch similar tasks together, or how to recover quickly from inevitable distractions. These are learnable skills that can dramatically improve productivity. The reality is that many businesses are basically running at 60 to 70% capacity without even realizing it. They're staffed for full productivity, but getting partial results because of all these hidden time thieves. By addressing the distraction problem head-on, companies could potentially accomplish the same amount of work with fewer people, or accomplish much more with the same team. The burnout connection. Those partial results from distraction don't just hurt companies, they're breaking people. Think about your most frustrating workday recently. Constantly switching tasks, never completing anything meaningful, then feeling weirdly exhausted afterward. That wasn't just a bad day. You were caught in what researchers call the distraction burnout loop. And honestly, it's basically an epidemic right now. The 2024 Insightful report revealed something pretty alarming about what's happening to our mental health at work. It turns out that a shocking 68% of employees reported feeling burnt out within the past year. That's more than 2/3 of the workforce. This burnout is happening across all industries and positions, not limited to overtime-heavy roles or particularly demanding jobs. What's really interesting is the connection the research found between our inability to focus and this widespread burnout. We've all had those days where we're constantly interrupted, right? Someone stops by your desk, then you get a notification, Then someone calls you into an impromptu meeting. Before you know it, the day is over and you've barely made progress on anything important. Every time you get interrupted, your brain has to stop what it was doing and switch gears. Then when you try to get back to your original task, you have to remember where you were, what you were thinking, and what you were planning to do next. This mental process takes a lot of energy, way more than if you'd just been able to focus on one thing continuously. When this pattern repeats daily, your brain rarely completes anything. You're constantly starting tasks, but seldom finishing them. The insightful report specifically calls out this stress cycle. Constant task switching and interruptions increase stress while diminishing your sense of accomplishment. Consider how satisfying it feels to complete something. Checking an item off your to-do list gives you a small dopamine hit, but in distraction-heavy environments, this feeling becomes rare. Instead, each day ends with half-finished tasks and the stress of knowing you'll face them again tomorrow. This creates what the report calls a dangerous feedback loop. You feel unproductive, which makes you stressed. Being stressed makes it harder to focus, which makes you even less productive. The cycle intensifies until you hit full burnout. I experienced this myself last winter during a critical project launch. I was responsible for coordinating between our development and marketing teams with an immovable deadline. Each morning, I'd create a detailed plan for what needed to be accomplished. But by 10 a.m., my schedule would be shattered by urgent requests and quick meetings. At night, I'd find myself sitting at my kitchen table at 11 p.m., still trying to complete the essential tasks I'd planned for 9 a.m. that morning. My partner noticed I'd stopped sleeping through the night and would find me checking emails at 3 a.m. After 3 weeks, I developed persistent headaches and found myself forgetting basic details in conversations. What scared me most wasn't the physical symptoms, but the growing sense that I no longer recognized myself or cared about work that had once energized me. That's when I realized I wasn't just busy, I was burning out. The really scary part is that this cycle of distraction and burnout can become your new normal if you don't recognize what's happening. You start to think this is just how work feels, constantly tired, always behind, never quite catching up. But it's not normal and it's not healthy. The good news is that managers seem to be catching on to this problem. According to the insightful report, 93% of managers claim that work-life balance is a top priority in their organizations. That's a positive sign that leadership is starting to understand the real costs of burnout. The report also found that 75% of managers say they regularly check in with team members to assess job satisfaction. About half of employers are using productivity software or workforce management tools to track workloads, while 56% have internal systems for assigning responsibilities more effectively. Here's where things get interesting, though. These management tools and check-ins only work if they address the root cause, the constant interruptions preventing focused work. It's like having a leaky roof. You could keep mopping up water, addressing the symptom, or fix the roof, addressing the cause. Too many companies are just mopping. They offer mental health days or wellness programs when they see burnout, which helps, but doesn't fix the work environment that makes focused work nearly impossible. The insightful report makes clear that when leadership protects employee-focused time, productivity improves, and employees feel better. They experience less stress and more satisfaction because they complete meaningful work throughout the day. This might mean implementing no meeting blocks for uninterrupted focus time, or creating clearer communication guidelines so people know when something is truly urgent versus when it can wait. Some companies are experimenting with asynchronous communication models where immediate responses aren't expected. This allows employees to batch communications into specific times, leaving the rest of their schedule open for focused work. Our brains simply aren't built to handle the constant interruptions that have become normal in most workplaces. We evolved to focus deeply on one task at a time, and when prevented from doing that, it creates cognitive stress that eventually leads to burnout. This explains why so many people feel completely wiped out after a day of work, even without physical exertion. Mental energy is real energy, and constantly shifting attention depletes it quickly. It also explains why remote work has been beneficial for many people's mental health. When you remove the in-person interruptions that the insightful report identified as the #1 source of workplace distractions, many people can finally focus long enough to enter a state of flow, that satisfying mental state, the flexibility solution. You're completely absorbed in what you're doing. While remote work has solved many interruption problems,